Hi, my name's Stephanie. My brother shoved me down a flight of stairs, and while I lay bruised in the hospital, my family group chat lit up, not with concern, but with spa selfies. No one called, not one of them showed up. Then I found out my name had been quietly removed from the family trust, 6 months before the fall. Was it ever just an accident? Or was I never meant to survive the silence? The house was too quiet for a Saturday afternoon, not the kind of peaceful quiet you'd hope for before Thanksgiving, more like the silence that comes before a storm. My mother was in the kitchen, humming a tune off-key while half-heartedly chopping celery, and my father was supervising from the living room recliner, flipping through cable channels he wouldn't actually watch. I sat at the dining table with my coffee, trying to read, but the tension in the room had already settled over everything like a damp sheet. I could feel Basil's presence behind me before I even heard his voice. "So," he said, casually loading his plate with the last of the turkey slices, "I guess it's easier to play the victim than contribute, huh?" I didn't look up. I didn't need to. He'd been ramping up the digs for weeks now, ever since I brought up the missing inheritance paperwork. "Excuse me?" I said quietly, setting my cup down. He laughed. "Oh, don't act surprised. Some of us actually work, Stephanie. Not everyone has time to sulk over old wounds." The words didn't sting. They itched. They reminded me of every time he made a mess and someone else had to clean it up. This wasn't new. It just had sharper teeth this time. Maya Angelou's voice echoed in my mind, steady and clear. "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." And Basil had shown me, more than once. I picked up my phone. I needed air. I needed to call Yara. I headed for the stairs, not bothering to announce it. If they didn't care enough to ask where I was going, I wasn't offering it up. I was halfway up when I heard him behind me. "Running to snitch again?" His voice was closer than I expected. I turned my head slightly. "It's called accountability, Basil. You should try it sometime." He reached for my phone. "Give it to me." I stepped up. "No." That's when it happened. His hand grabbed my wrist, and with one swift, practiced movement, he shoved. Not a trip, not a stumble, a shove. The world tilted. I felt my foot miss the edge of the step, my balance betray me. Then came the fall. Time slowed. The air rushed past me. I heard the crack before I felt the pain. And just as the floor came up to meet me, one clear thought cut through the chaos. This wasn't clumsy. This was intentional. The hardwood floor greeted me with no mercy. Pain exploded through my ribs, a sharp, blinding stab that stole my breath. My arm twisted beneath me at a wrong angle. My ears rang, my vision blurred, but I was awake. I was there. Someone gasped. "Look what you made me do," Basil muttered, then walked off like he'd just spilled coffee, not a person. I lay there, stunned, staring at the ceiling, waiting for someone to rush over, to check, to help. No one moved. Instead, I heard the unmistakable clicks of phone cameras, a couple of muffled snickers. From the floor, I saw Marla, my cousin, holding her phone up. A second later, the family group chat dinged. "OMG, what happened to her?" her caption read. Laughing emoji, crying emoji, thumbs up from someone else. Then more messages rolled in. "She always exaggerates. Here we go again." A gif of a clumsy cartoon character tumbling downstairs. My head pounded, not just from the fall, but from the sheer disbelief. I wasn't unconscious. I wasn't imagining it. I saw every comment, every heart react, every glib remark. And not one said, "Is she okay?" Not one. The room buzzed with casual conversation again. My body was screaming, but no one noticed. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. The next voice I heard wasn't family. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Dalton, shouting through the screen door. "Is she all right? Should I call someone?" Then came footsteps. Two paramedics in uniform burst through, moving with urgency none of my relatives had managed to summon. They lifted me onto the stretcher. My ribs protested. My shoulder felt like it was hanging by a thread. Only then did my mother appear, hair perfectly done, holding a wine glass like she'd been called away from something more important. "What's all this fuss?" she said, her tone more annoyed than alarmed. I caught her eye. She looked at me like I'd spilled red wine on her rug. The ride to the ER was quiet. I couldn't speak even if I wanted to. My throat was tight, my lungs shallow. Once inside, they scanned, poked, rapped, and noted. Fractured rib, dislocated shoulder, mild concussion. I nodded blankly as they listed the damage. My phone was taken during imaging. When it came back, the screen was dark. No texts, no missed calls. The group chat still buzzed, but not one message was about me. I lay on the paper-covered bed and replayed the fall in my mind. The moment he grabbed my wrist, the shove, the way he didn't flinch. He looked me in the eye when he did it. That's what broke me more than the bones. Lying under the two bright hospital lights, I remembered it wasn't the first time. There was the birthday party when I turned 27. He pushed me during an argument about the cake being the wrong kind. Said it was a joke. I laughed it off. Or the time in the parking lot when his door accidentally hit my face as he slammed it open. I told people I tripped. He never said sorry. I never asked. But now my body was reminding me of what my mind tried to forget. This wasn't new. It was just documented this time. The room beeped. Machines kept track of what my family didn't care to. I stared at the ceiling, unmoving. They laughed. They watched. They posted. I reached for my phone again, ignoring the ache in my ribs. It lit up with 23 unread messages. Not one said, "Are you okay?" The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, their pale glow bouncing off the sterile hospital walls. I blinked against the ache behind my eyes, unsure if it was from the concussion or the weight of being left behind again. My ribs throbbed every time I breathed too deeply, and the sling around my shoulder made it nearly impossible to get comfortable. I was alive, barely, but something deeper than bone felt broken. No one came. Not even a text. I reached for my phone, squinting at the screen. No missed calls, no voicemails, nothing from Mom, nothing from Dad, certainly nothing from Basil. My fingers hovered over the home button, almost out of habit, like I expected it to magically light up if I stared long enough. It didn't. "You're not invisible," I whispered into the empty room, as much a plea as a promise. Not this time. A nurse knocked gently before entering, holding a small package. "Delivery for you," she said, placing the brown box on the bedside table. "From Margot." My heart skipped. My mother? I stared at the box. It was wrapped haphazardly, like someone had remembered it at the last minute. I slid my good hand under the flap and slowly opened it. Inside sat a familiar, dust-covered wooden box, one I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. The heirloom box, Mom once called it. She had promised to give it to me on my 30th birthday, said it would be mine when I'd earned my place in the family. Earned, not belonged. Lifting the lid, I found only a single blank card inside. No note, no message, just silence in a container. Even the dust felt like a statement. They hadn't sent me comfort. They'd sent a reminder. I wasn't forgotten. I was intentionally excluded. I wasn't sick enough to care about, but broken enough to be discarded. My phone vibrated. A text from my cousin popped up. "Check what Uncle Doug just posted." I hesitated, then opened Facebook. There it was, a family photo taken last Thanksgiving. Everyone posed in the backyard, holding mugs of cider, smiling, warm, together. Except me. I wasn't in it. Not just missing. I had been cropped out. The caption read, "No matter what happens, we're always stronger together. #family first." The comments rolled in like salt in an open wound. Such a beautiful family. "Doug, you've done such a great job keeping everyone close. I love seeing happy families." Each line chipped away at something in me I hadn't realized was still intact. I wasn't angry at the picture. I was devastated by the lie they wanted the world to believe. They weren't even pretending anymore. I called Mom. It rang once, twice, then voicemail. Hi, it's me. I just wanted you to know. I was hurt, like badly. The doctors say I was lucky, though it doesn't feel like it. I guess I thought maybe someone would show up. Anyway, that's all. I didn't cry. I didn't expect her to call back. But I needed her to know I hadn't given up on them, not completely. A few minutes later, the doctor came in with my chart, kind eyes behind thin glasses. We've got your scans updated. You're healing slowly but steadily. Any family we should notify? I smiled weakly. No, I'm alone by choice. He nodded, but I could see the weight behind his pause. I wasn't fooling anyone, especially not myself. I just wanted to see if they'd come without being asked, I admitted softly, mostly to myself. The minutes crawled into hours, and the night fell slowly. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through past texts, glancing through emails, anything to ignore the emptiness pressing in. But I couldn't shake the spiral that had already begun. What was I in this family, really? The helper? The filler? The placeholder? I remembered all the birthdays I never forgot, the times I showed up with groceries when Mom was too tired to cook, the money I Venmo'd Vera for emergencies that somehow always led to concert tickets. I had given, quietly, without keeping score. Maybe that's why they liked me better broken. Easier to ignore, easier to blame, easier to use. A young physical therapist entered the room with a clipboard, smiling awkwardly. Miss L? I'm here to go over post-injury protocols. He spoke like someone trying to sound confident while still checking the manual. He guided me through gentle stretches, coached me on how to lift my arm without damaging the joint. Every movement burned, but I followed through. Gritting my teeth, swallowing down each wince. I didn't need sympathy. I needed to reclaim what still worked. This might feel like a setback, he said, but honestly, it's a new starting point. I nodded. Every injury teaches something. He paused. That's a really good way to look at it. I thanked him by name. It was the first time in 2 days someone had said mine out loud with kindness. After he left, I stayed seated in the chair by the window, sipping water slowly. The glass trembled in my hand, not from weakness, but from sheer effort to hold everything together. I opened the group chat again. Photos kept coming. Spa day selfies. Vera with a face mask and champagne flute. Self-care Sunday. A snapshot of a sushi plate. Someone replied, "Looks delicious." No one asked where I was. No one said they missed me. It was as if I'd never fallen, never existed. I didn't cry. I took screenshots. Not for revenge. For proof. For me. Because the most dangerous thing they'd tried to do was convince me it hadn't happened. Night settled into the corners of the room. The machines hummed gently around me, each beep a reminder I was still here. Maybe the silence wasn't ignorance. Maybe it was intentional. I felt my grip tighten around the phone. The ringer was still on, still hoping. I turned it off, not to shut them out, but to shut down hope. I wasn't supposed to see that video, but I did. It autoplayed after a reel on my cousin's page. No warning, no context. Just Vera, my sister, in a fluffy spa robe with cucumber slices over her eyes, talking to the camera like an influencer. Self-care is radical, especially when you've got drama-dripping siblings who just love attention. She laughed. That laugh, it pierced straight through me. Not because it was loud, but because it was familiar. I remembered that exact tone from years ago, when she told a group of girls at church that I was just being dramatic after I had a panic attack behind the organ room. I closed the app and let my phone fall into my lap. My chest was tight, not from the bruised ribs, but from something else. Something older. Something that never got a bandage. I closed my eyes and was instantly back there, 19, sitting stiffly in a lobby that smelled like cinnamon gum and cheap leather. My mother sat beside me, flipping through a Better Homes Gardens magazine like we were waiting to get a flu shot, not a mental evaluation. The therapist's office was colder than I expected. Neutral colors, soft lighting, everything meant to feel safe, but failing. The woman behind the desk asked simple questions at first: what brought me in, what my goals were, how I felt around my family. Then things turned. She asked if I ever heard voices, if I ever thought of hurting people, if I had outbursts I didn't remember. I didn't understand where it was coming from. I kept saying no, but she didn't seem to hear me. Weeks later, while applying for a leadership scholarship, my college counselor pulled me aside. "There's a note in your file about emotional instability," he said gently. "Something about borderline tendencies. I'm sorry, I have to ask about it." I was stunned. That wasn't a diagnosis. It was a narrative, one I didn't write. One they submitted without ever telling me. My breath caught in my throat. The worst part wasn't the label. It was the silence that followed. No one ever explained it. No one ever apologized. They just let it sit there, shaping how others viewed me, how I viewed myself. And for years, I swallowed it. Every time I got upset, I'd second-guess myself. Was I overreacting? Was this just my instability? I became hyper-aware of my own emotions, always trying to modulate, to not be too much. "You're just sensitive. Don't take it so personally. It's your nerves." That's what they said whenever I cried or got frustrated. It wasn't what happened that got questioned. It was my reaction to it. They didn't ignore my pain. They rewrote it. They needed me to be the one who overreacted. It gave them permission to keep crossing lines. I looked down at my hands, shaking slightly. I wasn't just grieving the present, I was mourning the years I let their version of me be louder than the truth. My phone buzzed again. Group chat. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Vera. "Another fall. Girl, gravity really has it out for you." Laughing emojis. Fire gifs. Cousin Alan replied with, "She always was clumsy." I stared at the screen, letting the heat rise quietly. They were branding me, again, making the fall a punchline, turning my pain into a performance. I didn't respond. Instead, I copied the message, took screenshots of the entire thread, saved them in a new album on my phone called Receipts. Then I opened a new note. Title: The Stories They Told. I started typing everything I remembered. The birthday when Basil pushed me into a bush and claimed I tripped. The Christmas when Vera said I ruined dinner for crying after Dad ignored my college acceptance letter. The family reunion when Mom told me to tone down my ambitions so I didn't intimidate the men. I wasn't writing it down to get even. I was writing to remember, to reclaim. This wasn't an emotional outburst. It was documentation. I called my old college counselor. I needed confirmation. He answered on the third ring. "Stephanie," he said, his voice still calm, still kind. "I was just thinking about you." I told him about the file, about the label, about how I'd only recently understood the impact. There was a pause. "I remember that," he said. "It never felt right. You were the most grounded student I worked with from your cohort. I always felt that note was more about them than you." My throat tightened. "You're not crazy," he continued. "You're one of the most lucid people I've ever met from that house." That word, lucid, landed like a balm on raw skin. I thanked him, asked if he could confirm what he saw, maybe put it in writing. He agreed without hesitation. After we hung up, I emailed myself the conversation summary and saved it to a secure drive. Proof. Lying back on the pillow, I stared up at the ceiling tiles, letting the emotion pass through me. Not grief, not rage, clarity. They branded me emotional so they could be cruel without guilt. I whispered that sentence to myself, then opened my journal. It became the first line on a new page. I closed the book, not with peace, but with readiness. They didn't know it yet. But I was remembering everything. And this time, I wasn't going to forget. I lay in that hospital bed, phone in hand, scrolling, not out of habit, but in calculated observation. My eyes jumped between the chat thread and my notes, dissecting each sentence like a surgeon working without anesthesia. The silence around me wasn't peace anymore. It was stage lighting. It meant someone was watching, preparing. That's what I told myself anyway. I pulled up the digital copy of my medical chart. I'd requested access earlier that day, pretending it was for insurance, but I needed to know. I needed to see what they wrote. No mention of the push, not a word about falling from the top of the stairs or brought in by paramedics after family incident. It read like I'd stumbled over my own feet and landed there by cosmic accident. And that's when it hit me. They were already rewriting it. I remembered the ER doctor that night, how he hesitated when I asked if this would be reported. His eyes had darted to the hallway, and then he gave me a measured answer. "It depends on what you'd like to document, ma'am." I didn't think much of it at the time. I was foggy, aching, scared. But now, in this sharp clarity that only betrayal gives you, I saw it. He wasn't protecting me. He was shielding someone else. Someone important. Someone connected. I wrote down his name and that of the nurse who walked in right after him. I would find them both once I was discharged. No more giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's how I ended up here. My mother answered on the third ring this time. "I know what's been covered," I said. No emotion, no pleading, just a fact delivered clean. There was a pause. Her voice was cold when it came. Why would we want to involve outsiders in family matters? I let the silence linger just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "If you all keep pretending I fell," I said slowly, "I won't. I'll speak." Still no apology, no surprise, just stillness. She didn't hang up. I did. Back in my room, I noticed something strange. My duffel bag. The zipper wasn't the way I left it. I opened it slowly and dug through the layers until I reached the inner sleeve where I kept my emergency folder. Handwritten therapy notes. Printouts. Copies of old appointment logs. Gone. The folder was gone. I pressed the nurse call button, and when she arrived, I kept my voice even. "Has anyone visited me today? A man, possibly?" She shook her head. "No visitors were signed in for you, but I did see someone near your door this afternoon. I assumed he was with staff." I thanked her and pulled out my phone. My cloud account showed activity 3 hours ago, from a device named Shared Home Tablet. The family iPad, the one usually sitting in Dad's office. They weren't just covering their tracks anymore. They were trying to erase mine. My mind reeled back to a memory I had buried deep. I was maybe 10, and Basil had broken a vase that was passed down from my grandmother. Dad had rushed in, saw the mess, and before I could open my mouth, he snapped at Basil. "Fix it before she speaks." That line had meant nothing to me then. Now it chilled me. Basil hadn't grown up reckless. He was groomed, the gaslighting, the calculated apologies, the way he always managed to be the victim. It wasn't random. It was rehearsed, and I had been part of the audience. Not anymore. I opened the group chat, took a breath, and typed, "I will be keeping my own records from now on. Please don't delete what you're too scared to admit." Then I put my phone down and waited. The replies came in like a slow leak. "WTF does that mean?" From Vera. "Why are you always making things complicated?" From Mom. 2 confused face emojis, a gif of someone clutching pearls. And then Basil. "Stop acting like a victim." I screenshotted everything, emailed copies to myself, uploaded to 2 separate encrypted folders. I had no plans to argue, only to archive. I leaned back and let the tears come, not loud, not heaving, just quiet, steady grief rolling down the sides of my face like rain on glass. "I didn't cry because they hurt me," I whispered into the air. "I cried because I gave them so many chances not to." Toni Morrison once wrote, "Anything dead coming back to life hurts." I understood it now. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a reanimation. I was coming back to myself, one truth at a time, and it burned. When the room stilled again, I reached for my phone. Opened the recorder app, pressed record. My voice was even, but my hands trembled. Name, Stephanie Lynn. Date, Sunday, 5:42 p.m. Location, Sacred Pines Medical, room 304. I told the story, every detail. From the first shove to the group chat laughter to the missing file folder. This isn't for court, I ended. This is for clarity. I hit save. Just as the screen went dark, a new message appeared. Unknown number. You need to stop. I didn't recognize the number. But I knew exactly who sent it. The nurse wheeled me to the hospital entrance and gave a sympathetic smile before retreating inside. My rideshare pulled up right on time, and I climbed in slowly, my ribs reminding me that healing doesn't wait for permission. The drive home was quiet, just the occasional hum of tires and the driver's half-hearted humming along to the radio. When we pulled up to my apartment, I stepped out without saying much. My bag, light but symbolically heavy, slung over one shoulder as I walked up the stairs. I reached my door, slid the key in, and paused. They think I'm done, I murmured under my breath. But I've just started. Inside, the air was still and familiar. My living room greeted me with silence, not out of malice, but mercy. I set the bag down gently, exhaled, and pulled out my phone. The family group chat had a dozen unread messages. I didn't open them. Not yet. Let's see what version of the truth they've written today. Eventually, curiosity won. I tapped into the thread and began scrolling. The first thing I saw was Vera's message. Just to clarify, Stephanie and I talked and agreed to keep everything private. No drama. She understands. What? Beneath it, replies poured in. So glad to hear that. Proud of you two. That's how family handles things. She knows you didn't mean it, Vera. No. I never said that. My hands tightened around the phone. My pulse climbed, but my breathing stayed even. They're not just rewriting the story. They're assigning me a role I never auditioned for. I took a deep breath, screenshot the entire exchange, then tapped to reply. It had been months since I'd said anything publicly in that chat. My message was short. No agreement has been made. No conversation took place. Vera does not speak for me. Then I put my phone down. It only took a minute. Basil. Steph, don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I started to type something longer, erased it, typed again. Erased again. Finally, I settled on 6 words. Too late. You already did. And hit send. For a while, the thread went quiet. Then, a ping. My father. It's not fair to put all of this on your brother, he wrote. He's under a lot of pressure right now. With the business, the house, he's stressed. You know how he gets when he's overwhelmed. He didn't mean to hurt you. Of course, the classic family defense. He didn't mean it, because if they explain him well enough, maybe I'll disappear under the logic. I shut the app and tossed the phone onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. I'd heard it all before. The excuses, the reframes, the carefully phrased minimizations. My mind drifted to past incidents, tiny injustices that had been brushed aside like crumbs from the family dinner table. When Basil crashed my first car, I was told, "He's just a kid, Steph." He didn't understand the responsibility yet. When he stole money from Mom's purse during college, it was, "He's going through a phase. He'll come around." When he slammed a door into my shoulder during an argument, "You probably startled him. Don't push his buttons." I'd been the collateral damage to protect their favorite. My phone vibrated again, this time a private message from Vera. "Why are you trying to ruin our family?" I stared at it for a long moment, fingers hovering. Then I replied, "I'm not ruining it. I'm just refusing to carry the silence anymore." I saved the message, then posted a screenshot of it to my personal page. Caption: When you refuse to be silent, they say you're making noise. I didn't add context. I didn't need to. By now, the people who knew. The sun dipped behind the apartment building as I sat at the kitchen table, sipping water slowly. My body ached, but not as much as my trust. I opened my journal and began writing. I gave them one chance to stop lying. They didn't take it. I paused, reread the sentence, then wrote another beneath it. You can't make someone listen who's committed to misunderstanding you. I closed the journal, sat still in the quiet. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Let it ring. The voicemail came through less than a minute later. I pressed play. You think you're brave now. Let's see how long that lasts. The voice was low, disguised, but the message was clear. I played it again, and again. Then I saved it to my archive folder, the same one with screenshots, call logs, and copies of my statement. I'm saving this for the archive, I said aloud, and the authorities. Because the line had been drawn. And now, I was watching who would cross it. I hadn't slept. Not really. I'd closed my eyes, but sleep never came. Just thoughts, spiraling and sharp, looping like a broken cassette in a silent room. Morning light slipped in through the blinds, casting lines across the couch where I'd eventually collapsed. My body hurt in new places, but my mind had never been clearer. Today wasn't about survival. It was about strategy. I sat up slowly, every muscle protesting, and opened my laptop. The folders waited, screenshots of texts, audio recordings, every voicemail, every saved thread. I titled the main folder, The Archive. Each subfolder bore a name: Vera, Basil, Margot, Doug. Then I opened a blank document and wrote across the top, What they don't expect me to have. I began typing. Document logs, witness notes, legal contacts. Every step I planned to take. Every backup I'd already secured. As I typed, I whispered to no one but myself. Let's see how long they think I'm still their secret. The knock at the door startled me. It wasn't frantic, just 2 taps. I peeked through the peephole. No one there, just a plain brown bag sitting on the mat. I hesitated, then opened the door and brought the bag inside. Inside was a small glass container, familiar. It was the same kind of lunch container Yara used to bring me when we worked together, always packed with care, a cloth napkin folded neatly inside. I opened the lid, turkey on rye, extra pickles, just how I liked it. And underneath, a note, handwritten in tight block letters. They're watching you. Don't trust Vera, not even your dad. Don't reply. No name, no signature. But I knew the handwriting. Yara. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from confirmation. She knew. Someone else had seen the cracks and stayed silent too long. I wrapped the note in plastic, tucked it inside a Ziploc bag, and placed it in the freezer. Because that wasn't paranoia. That was preparation. I opened my security footage app. My cameras should have caught the delivery. Should have, but there was nothing. Just a glitch in the timeline, a 5-minute blank space. I clicked back, again, nothing. I opened TikTok, pure instinct, searched for my streets tag. There it was. A delivery guy had posted a short video the night before, one of those something weird happened while delivering food clips. The angle was wide, shaky, but in the background, parked across the street, was a silver car with a busted back taillight. Basil's car. He always said he'd fix it, never did. I saved the video immediately. They still think I'm too slow to put 2 and 2 together, I muttered. I stood, walked over to my corkboard, and pinned the new screenshot. Then another, a message, a timestamp, a voicemail. Each pin drove home a truth they had tried so hard to bury. This wasn't about one push. This was a blueprint, a system, a structure of manipulation that they had been building for years. And I'd finally mapped it. I texted my father directly. The next lie you endorse will be included in the timeline. No threats, just data. His reply came fast. We should talk. Face to face. I didn't answer. I took a screenshot. I stood in front of the mirror, straightened my shirt, combed my hair. The bruises showed, but I didn't cover them. I looked myself in the eye and practiced. No more trembling, no more looking down. I repeated it until it stuck. Maya Angelou's words echoed in my head. Each time a woman stands up for herself, she stands up for all women. I grabbed my external drive, the one with every saved file, and locked it in the small safe deposit box I'd rented 3 days prior, just in case. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea when my chest cracked open, not physically but emotionally. I pressed play on the voicemail from Basil again, the one where he threatened me. I let it play through, once, twice, and then I cried. Not the kind of cry that asks for pity, the kind that finally admits it's been carrying too much for too long. And when it was done, I wrote, legal consult, media prep, secure witness statements, cross-reference timelines, backup to off-site drive. The plan wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. I stood, stretched, and walked to the front door, pulled it open for fresh air, and froze. There, taped to the outside of my door, was a white envelope. My name typed neatly across the front. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printed screenshot of my timeline board, every pin, every label, my handwriting, my notes. Someone had been inside. On the back, scrawled in red ink, it read, "Stop before we make you disappear for real." My hand didn't shake. I didn't cry. I scanned it, photographed it, and saved it under a new label in the archive. Threats. Because this wasn't about fear anymore. It was war. The envelope sat open on my lap, the paper inside still cold from the night air. The ink was sharp, the threat even sharper. My name wasn't just printed, it was targeted. They were here, inside, close enough to touch what I hid. I said it aloud, like naming the horror might lessen it. I moved slowly through the apartment, checking every lock. Front door, still bolted. Windows, all latched. Back balcony, untouched. Nothing looked disturbed, and yet, everything felt off. That invisible shift, like coming home to furniture you didn't remember moving. My mind spun. Whoever it was had been in my space. They'd walked past my bed, past the folders pinned to the corkboard, and left their message like a calling card. I remembered something a therapist once told me. Betrayal never comes from your enemies, only those close enough to matter. I opened my laptop and pulled up the security footage. Nothing. The entire feed skipped from 9:47 to 9:58 p.m. Exactly 11 minutes gone. My hands moved quickly through the system settings. The camera logs didn't show anything unusual, except for a single entry labeled Admin Override. I'd never seen it before, and I'd never enabled remote access. I sat back and closed my eyes. Someone hadn't just broken in, they'd bypassed my system like a pro. And that narrowed it down. Basil, he worked in real estate, managed tech-enabled rentals. He knew smart systems, knew the brands I used. It wouldn't have taken much. My pulse slowed. This wasn't carelessness, it was orchestration. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering over Yara's name, but I didn't text. Not yet. Even her silence lately felt loaded. Maybe it was just timing, maybe not. If I can't trust my family and I can't trust my friends, I whispered, then it's just me. I opened a new encrypted folder and labeled it, "If found after something happens to me." Inside, I added a video I took yesterday, narrating the message, the threats, and my fears, calmly, without panic. Then I emailed the link to my own legal backup, covering my tracks, preemptively. Later that afternoon, I knocked on the door of my neighbor, Mrs. Harwick. Her apartment overlooked mine. If anyone had seen the person who left the envelope, it would have been her. Her son answered. He looked at me like I was selling insurance. "Is your mother home?" I asked. He didn't open the door wider. She's resting. Did she happen to notice anyone on the porch last night, around 10? He hesitated. She didn't mention anything. I nodded slowly. Would you mind asking her? He tensed. She's old. She's not reliable with details. And honestly, she's not getting involved in your mess. There it was, the exact phrase that echoed through my childhood like a nursery rhyme. Don't get involved in her mess. I took a step back. Thanks, I said softly. I turned away, but not before glancing back. Just long enough to remember I'd seen him talking to my father last week. At the hardware store, laughing. Connections form quietly in this family. Favors flow under the table. Back at home, I pulled up public property records. Harwick's name appeared on one. Her mortgage had been suddenly marked as closed last month. Closed, no explanation, just paid in full. And the bank? The same small firm Doug had worked with since the early 90s. I printed the documents and added them to my timeline. Every favor they buy only proves I'm right, I said. The sun set slowly that night, casting my apartment in a gold wash that felt false. My heart started pounding without warning. That sensation, like someone standing just behind you. I turned. No one. Was it real? I couldn't tell anymore. I began sleeping with my phone recording, just in case. Just to confirm that I wasn't losing it. At 2:04 a.m., my doorbell rang. I froze. I looked at the camera app. Nothing. No alert. No recording. Just silence. And my own rising terror. They're not just trying to silence me, I said into the dark. They're trying to break me. By morning, I'd made a decision. I called in a favor. A freelance security consultant I'd met through a friend. Quiet guy. Worked for himself. Took no nonsense. He came by in the afternoon, ran diagnostics on everything. Router logs, device history, my laptop, my phone, my cameras. After an hour, he sat down across from me, eyes serious. You're not crazy, he said. You're compromised. He showed me where the code had been inserted, the breach in the cloud sync, the false timestamps. They'd been watching. For how long? And I didn't ask. It didn't matter. I need two things, I said. A recording pen and a signal blocker. He handed them over like I'd just asked for a flashlight. As soon as he left, I got to work. I installed the pen camera between two books on my shelf. I repositioned the mirrors in my hallway to give me wider sightlines from the kitchen. I tested the blocker by cutting off every wireless signal from outside the apartment for exactly 10 minutes. It worked. I was nearly done resetting everything when my phone vibrated. A text. From Dad. Let it go, or someone else will get hurt next. I didn't scream. I didn't reply. I saved the message. And just like that, I knew. They weren't just covering their tracks. They were laying traps. The group text came in mid-morning Tuesday. Vera, of course. Dinner tonight? Just family. No drama. Just peace. Let's move forward. I stared at the message like it was a badly written script. The kind where the villain thinks one dinner can sweep everything under the rug. No apology, no accountability, just table settings and fake smiles. They thought I'd stay away. That was exactly why I was going. I dressed without emotion. Something clean, neutral, but deliberate. I placed a flash drive and a sealed envelope into my purse. The drive held copies of everything. Audio, screenshots, the timeline board photos, the envelope, the summary, just in case they needed it printed. As I zipped the bag shut, one thought settled in my mind like a prayer. Sometimes peace requires a war first. That night, I stepped through the front door of the house I grew up in. The lights were warm, the kitchen smelled like rosemary chicken, and every greeting was dipped in artificial honey. Avira met me first. Her hug was short, a polite press of shoulders and perfume. You made it, she smiled. Good. Doug raised his wine glass from the end of the table. To new beginnings. I didn't answer. I scanned the table, noting the place cards. Everyone had one, except me. I walked over and picked up Vera's. Switched it with the blank. No one objected. If they won't name me, I'll name myself, I thought. Before dinner was served, I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope, placed it in the center of the table. This contains every message, voice recording, financial transaction, and witness account I've collected. If any of you deny what you've done, I'll make it public. Silence cracked like glass. Vera's hand knocked over her wine. Basil cursed under his breath. Margot's voice, smooth but tight. We're just trying to heal, Steph. I turned to her. You can't heal what you keep wounding. No one moved. Doug cleared his throat. Basil, of course, couldn't stay quiet. You've been paranoid for years, he said. You twist everything. You make people scared to talk. I tapped my phone. A familiar voice filled the room. Basil's. You think you're brave now? Let's see how long that lasts. Recorded. Crystal clear. His face drained. He stood, red-faced, and stormed out. The door slammed behind him. No one followed. I let the silence hang there. Let them feel what it was like to sit in the space where truth landed. Then I walked over to the mantel, picked up the family photo from last Christmas, held it up, flipped it. Taped behind it was the original, the one with me in it. You didn't just push me out of the conversation, I said. You pushed me out of the frame. Margot's mouth parted slightly. It wasn't personal. No, it was strategic. I left the photo face down. After a few moments, I walked down the hall to the bathroom, shut the door behind me. I leaned over the sink, breathing slowly, trying to steady the shaking in my fingers. I stared at myself. You did not break. You did not scream. You showed them. Somewhere in my mind, I heard my old counselor's voice. There's power in choosing not to flinch. I fixed my hair, straightened my spine, and walked back out. The table was quiet. No one touched their food. I walked to my chair, picked up the envelope again. You had a choice, I said. This was it. I placed it back on the table, unopened, and walked out. Didn't look back. Sometimes closure isn't a door, I told myself. It's a boundary. Back at my apartment, I locked the door behind me and exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. The number was familiar, but unexpected. Doug's assistant. You should know, he said. Your name's been removed from something important. Thought you'd want to see the paperwork. I sat down slowly, heart pounding not from surprise, but from recognition. So this was never about apologies. It was always about assets. I replayed the voicemail 3 times before I let the words sink in. Doug's assistant had the voice of someone trying to be helpful but terrified of being caught doing so. Your name's been removed from something important, he said, each syllable laced with a quiet urgency. I thought you'd want to see the paperwork. I didn't need to guess what something was. My body moved before my thoughts could catch up, pulling open the file drawer under my desk, labeled, ironically, legal. I hadn't looked in it in months. Most of it was old tax records, insurance policies, and printouts my father insisted I keep, just in case. As I scanned through the stack, my eyes froze on a folder titled Family Trust. It wasn't mine, it was Doug's, copied years ago during some estate planning meeting I half attended before being told I didn't need to stay for the financial stuff. There it was, my name, once listed as secondary beneficiary, scratched out with a thick black line. Typed below it, revised beneficiary, Basil R.L. No signature from me, no discussion, just erasure, not oversight, erasure. They erased me on paper, I whispered, because they couldn't silence me in person. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone. I needed proof, something, anything that said I hadn't imagined it, that I wasn't paranoid, that I was right. And then, ping, a new message in my inbox. Subject line, we need to talk. He did it to me too. Sender, Emily F. It took me a moment to place the name. Emily, Basil's ex. I met her once, years ago, in a hallway at a birthday party. She wore red lipstick and never quite smiled with her eyes, I replied quickly. She suggested a cafe downtown. I agreed. The next morning, I arrived early and chose a booth near the back, facing the door. Emily walked in 5 minutes later, wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a manila folder. "I'm not here to make friends," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "But I've watched what's happening, and I couldn't stay quiet." "What happened?" I asked. She hesitated, then took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were tired, determined. "Basil shoved me down a flight of stairs during an argument," she said. "I was pregnant. I miscarried the next day." My breath caught. I didn't press charges. My parents begged me not to, said it would ruin the family's standing, that I'd be blamed. And they weren't wrong. "Why now?" I asked. Her answer came without pause. "Because you said it out loud first." We sat in silence for a long time. When she handed me a copy of her medical report and a notarized personal statement, I took it without words. The puzzle pieces didn't just fit, they locked into place. Aggression, silence, blame shifting. The same script, different victim. "They knew," I said, "and they let him near me anyway." When I got home, the mailbox held another surprise. No return address, just a cream envelope with my name handwritten across the front. Inside was a note on hospital letterhead, Dr. Kaur. I wasn't allowed to note the full truth. It read, "I've written an affidavit. I'm sorry it took me this long." Attached, a notarized document stating that I had told the ER team I was pushed and that the language had been altered in the official file at request of family. My hands shook, not from fear, from vindication. It wasn't just my word anymore. I scanned every page, filed them under legal evidence, then attached them to an encrypted email for my attorney. "This isn't just a story," I said aloud. "It's a case." And it was airtight. That night, I didn't sleep. 2 blocked calls rang through. Both went unanswered. At 3:31 a.m., the sound of shattering glass yanked me upright. The front window, gone. I stayed still. Not from shock, but from calculation. I dialed the police. They came, took photos, filed the report, noted the cameras were cut again. The officer looked at me kindly. "Any idea who might have done this?" "No idea," I replied, then added, "You might not be able to see them, but I do." The next morning, I made my final move. I drafted a post, redacted documents, blurred names, a simple caption. "If something happens to me, know this wasn't an accident." I set it to auto-post in 72 hours if I didn't log in. Then I uploaded the full backup to a secure drive in another state. By noon, I'd done everything I could. At 6:07 p.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Doug, alone, holding a manila folder. I opened the door halfway. "We need to talk," he said. "This has gone too far." I didn't move. "It only just started," I replied. He sat across from me, manila folder in hand, like this was just a business meeting. The same man who used to braid my hair in the kitchen while reading court filings now looked at me like I was a contract gone wrong. "You've made your point," he began, voice low and steady, like we were allies in something instead of adversaries. "But this is bigger than you think." He slid the folder across the table. I didn't open it. "It's a clean settlement," he continued. "Confidentiality, no press, no more legal steps. You walk away, and we never mention this again. It's enough money to start over." He smiled like he was offering a gift, like he hadn't watched me be shoved down a flight of stairs and erased from family photos. I didn't smile back, because he still thought this was a negotiation. I pulled out my phone and tapped play on an old recording. Dad's voice from years ago, crystal clear. "If you ever hurt your sister, I swear I'll disown you." The change in his expression was slow, but telling. His jaw tightened, eyes briefly darted toward the folder, then back to me. "You recorded that?" he asked. "No, Mom did. You left the voicemail after Basil slammed my hand in the car door. Remember? You were furious. For 20 minutes. He tried to soften his tone. It was just tough talk. Every parent says things like that. I leaned forward, voice even. It wasn't just talk. It was a contract with your own integrity. You breached it. He didn't answer. Later that afternoon, I sat across from my attorney in her downtown office. I handed her a thick file, Emily's statement, Dr. Kaur's affidavit, voicemail recordings, financial changes, digital threats. She scanned through them without comment until the end. We can file under civil conspiracy, emotional damages, defamation, and possibly obstruction if we prove tampering, she said, tapping the edge of the documents. I nodded once. She handed me a pen. I signed. They'll finally hear me, I thought, not in my voice, but in legal language they can't twist. That evening, a public statement from my attorney went live. Our client, Stephanie Lynn, has filed legal action against members of her immediate family, citing a documented pattern of psychological abuse, coercion, and reputational sabotage. The media latched on like wildfire. My inbox filled within minutes. The family group chat? It exploded. Take it down. You didn't need to do this. You're destroying us. I didn't reply. I read every message. Let them sit there, because I had warned them, and silence had been their last mercy. That night, my scheduled post went live. My name is Stephanie. I was pushed. I was erased. But I'm not invisible anymore. The reactions poured in, some supportive, some accusatory. You're turning on your own blood. You've lost your mind. Stay strong. I see you. One comment stuck out. Anonymous. The family was broken. I just stopped bleeding quietly. I clicked like. Alone in my apartment, I sat by the window with tea, scrolling. My hands trembled a little, but I didn't delete a single comment. I let them live, just like I finally let myself. Then I cried. Not out of sadness, but out of pride. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to stand anyway. And I had. Even if it meant I might never speak to some of them again. That truth settled in like a cold breeze through an open window. The family I had craved love from. They loved only in conditions. Be quiet. Be agreeable. Be loyal. But only if it served them. Brené Brown once wrote, "You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside and hustle for your worthiness." I chose to walk inside it. It hurt like hell, but it was honest. I opened a new folder on my desktop, titled it Truth Vault, saved every article, every statement, every headline. And then, just before bed, my phone pinged. A text from my lawyer. There's a response. Basil's filed a countersuit, defamation. We expected this. I closed my laptop. Let them come. This time, I'm not standing alone. You're being sued for defamation, reputational harm, and causing emotional distress. My attorney said it with a steady voice, sliding the stack of papers across the table between us. I didn't flinch. They're bluffing, she added, trying to scare you into silence. I glanced down at Basil's signature scrawled across the bottom of the claim. His version of damage control was to paint himself as the victim, again. I gave a small smile. They still think I scare easy. She chuckled once, then turned the page. Let's take a look at the financial records we pulled from Discovery. I think you'll want to see this. My smile faded. There, highlighted in yellow, was the clause from the estate trust. My name had been listed as the secondary beneficiary until 6 months before the fall. The revision was clean, filed through their attorney. Removed, Stephanie Lynn, replaced with Basil R. Lynn. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a clerical error. It was erasure. She flipped to the next page, correspondence between Margot and the estate planner, initiated by Mom, signed by Dad. My hands stayed still, but everything inside me cracked in silence. It was never about protecting Basil, I said, voice flat. It was about positioning him. They didn't just push me down those stairs. They pushed me out of the will, out of their future, out of the family. They didn't just remove my name, I said quietly. They removed my identity in their story. Back at my apartment, I sat with that realization pressing into my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. I thought of all the moments I'd waited, at birthdays, at holidays, for one of them to ask me why I pulled away, why I left early, why I didn't speak up. They never did. They didn't want to understand me. They wanted to manage me. Every effort from them had been to steer, mute, or contain me. I wasn't their daughter. I was their descent. They were trying to bury. The memories came in waves, being told I was too much when I asked hard questions, too loud when I defended myself, too independent when I didn't need them. They weren't trying to raise me. They were trying to shape a silent supporter. I lit a candle in the living room, set the box of printed documents on the coffee table. One by one, I pulled them out, not as wounds to reopen, but as facts to file. I organized everything into binders. Truth, intent, power. Each label stared back at me like a mirror, reflecting not what they'd done, but what I'd survived. If they wrote me out, I whispered, I'll write myself back in, accurately. The next morning, my attorney suggested a countersuit. I shook my head before she could finish. I don't want escalation. I want exposure. This ends in daylight, not more destruction. We drafted a statement instead. No venom, no theatrics. Just truth. Clarity without chaos. Power, I reminded myself, isn't who yells louder. It's who no longer needs to. Later that night, I looked around my apartment and finally saw it. This wasn't just a place I lived. It was my courtroom, my war room, my sanctuary. The timeline board was still on the wall. Each note, each pin, each thread of truth holding up my spine. I stood in the center of the room and whispered, "They never thought I'd last this long." I looked at the door. But I'm still here. I wrote one final personal letter. No addressee, no salutation, just truth. You were not crazy. You were not dramatic. You were not disposable. I folded the page carefully and burned it in the sink. Watched the smoke rise until there was nothing left but air. This isn't bitterness, I thought. This is release. A knock at the door interrupted the quiet. I opened it slowly. A courier stood there, holding a small box. Delivery for Stephanie Lynn. I signed, took it, and shut the door. No return address. I opened the lid. Inside, a photo of me as a child, smiling, missing teeth, arms wide, taped over the original family photo I had been cut out of. A sticky note on the back read, "You were always part of the picture. Some of us never forgot." My breath hitched, not from hurt, but from the weight of unexpected grace. And suddenly, the silence I thought I'd buried had something left to say. I walked into the courthouse without a shred of tremble in my step, not out of confidence, but finality. I wore a tailored black blazer, soft blouse, hair pulled back, not to impress, not to please, but because intention is visible before a word is spoken. They were already seated. Basil, fiddling with his cuffs like he still believed control lived in appearances. Vera, glancing at her phone every few seconds, visibly agitated. Margot and Doug sat side by side, their arms crossed, posture stiff and silent. This isn't a trial of facts, I told myself. It's a funeral for their version of me. My attorney leaned over. "We're ready when you are." I reached into my briefcase and gripped the file labeled, "Buried Truths," signed by blood. They called my name. I stood, the room quieted, and I spoke. I was erased. Not suddenly, not all at once, but deliberately. Cut out of documents, conversations, history, made small until I nearly disappeared. I scanned their faces. Basil's jaw clenched, Margot looked away. Vera crossed her arms tighter. For years, I was the emotional one, the unstable one, the dramatic sister. I raised the affidavit from Dr. Kaur. This confirms the medical record was altered, at someone's request. Then the signed statement from Emily. She lost a child to the same hand that pushed me, and she was told to stay silent. I took a breath. You didn't just try to destroy me. You tried to pretend I never existed. And that is unforgivable. Basil shifted. That's not... Mr. Lynn, the judge interrupted. You'll stay silent unless addressed. The power in the room turned, visibly, audibly. I looked down at my notes one last time, folded them, then handed the court clerk a packet of my own, a notarized document, legal name change, withdrawal from the family trust, rescinding all prior power of attorney documents. You don't get to own any part of me, not emotionally, not legally. And then I dropped the last bombshell. I'm publishing everything. Redacted names, full facts. This isn't vengeance. It's a record. I paused. I will not just survive this. I'll author the aftermath. By evening, headlines spread. Family legal feud unfolds in Oregon courtroom. Whistleblower dismantles decades of manipulation. I didn't read them in real time. I didn't have to. The ripple moved faster than I anticipated. Vera's social feed vanished within hours. Basil's business website quietly changed ownership. Margot's name was removed from 2 charity boards. I didn't gloat. I ordered a chai latte, sat by the window of a quiet cafe, and watched the city move like it didn't know my name. It felt perfect. I didn't ruin them, I whispered. I revealed them. 2 days later, I received an email from a man I hadn't seen in almost 10 years, a former friend of Basil. I saw what happened. I should have spoken up sooner. Attached were documents, old texts, screenshots, voicemails, proof of behavior I couldn't confirm until now. They sealed the narrative like a wax stamp. I smiled, not in triumph, in relief. Truth doesn't need a crowd, I typed back. Just evidence and patience. That night, I deleted the family group chat. No archiving, just gone. Then I walked to the bench where I once waited for them to visit me after the hospital. I remembered sitting there, wondering if they'd show up. They didn't. This time, I sat for a different reason, not to be found, but to feel peace. I am no longer waiting for their version of closure. I opened my notebook one last time, wrote, I'm no longer Stephanie L. Whatever. I am Stephanie. Survivor. Author. Whole. I tore out the page, folded it carefully, walked into a bookstore nearby and slid the paper into a copy of Women Who Rise on the shelf. Maybe someone else would find it. Maybe she'd need it more than I did. As I turned to leave, a young woman nearby reached for the same book. Found the page. She looked up at me. Didn't say anything. Just nodded. I nodded back. I walked outside. No wind, but still. I felt a breeze, a clearing. I don't forgive them, I thought. But I forgive myself for staying too long. And if one girl reads my story and feels less alone, it was worth every scar.